Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2012's Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance, the final handheld exclusive game in the franchise that put all the pieces in place for the final encounter with the forces of darkness.
Following that is the SNES side-scrolling monkey platforming sequel, where childhood friends team up to rescue the titular Big Ape himself, 1995's Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Kong Quest. Yes, that's right. That's what the title is. We'll get to it. It's a thing. It's fine. The theme this week. Let's talk about some dual protagonists in these games. And specifically, your control to the other one switches when you'd least expect it, with less than ideal circumstances. Did you get hit? Did you run out of time on a timer? I mean, I guess maybe monkeys are kind of another thing with the Dream Eaters in Kingdom Hearts 3D.
For me, it's dual protagonists where one of the protagonists is just blatantly better than the other one. Riku is better than Sora. Dixie is so much better than Diddy.
Yeah, there is that too. Well, Joe, before we get into everything, how are you doing? What are you playing?
I have been doing fine overall. It's been a busy week, though not as busy as I thought it would be. That being said, I am very close to the end of Danganronpa. We were talking about this before we started recording. I stopped right when the investigation phase began in Chapter 6, which is the final chapter in the game. Enjoying it quite a bit. Almost there. We can see the finish line. I'm also 4 worlds into your game.
Huh.
I started it last night because I've never beaten it.
Okay.
I've only watched it be beaten. So on Nintendo Switch Online, just went ahead and loaded that up. I'm at the start of World 4 now. And then the other 2, I finished Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Night. If you like Metroidvanias, this is a game you should probably look into. And then I started a game called Child of Light, because I want to talk about it eventually. Did you know that game's not a platformer? I thought that game was a platformer.
No, it's not a platformer.
It's an RPG.
Yes, it is.
I've gone my entire life thinking it was a platformer for some reason. I don't know why. Lastly, I played a little bit of a game that came out last week called Chris Tales. Kind of disappointed in what I've seen so far, but I'm going to try and soldier ahead. But if you have any interest in like kind of Paper Mario-ish style RPGs, maybe wait for a couple of patches on this one. That's all I'm going to say on that. But yeah, I've been playing bits and pieces of various other games, not really finishing anything recently. So there's that.
I've been tempted to give Chris Tales a shot on Game Pass, so maybe I'll wait a little bit longer on that. It's been a pretty good week for games, time of recording here. Between that and Death's Door, that seems like a really interesting one to eventually give a shot, so that seems pretty neat. And also possible soundtracks for the end of the year. I haven't done too much as far as games, play some Super Mario Party, play some Hades a little bit. Trying to do Hades with like a random number generator with someone helping you out, or you do it by yourself, is a lot of fun. Like if you do there are 3 doors, 1 through 3, pick which door to go through. Oh, this boon, pick 1 through 3. Which boon should I take? Things like that. It's an interesting way of kind of mixing it up a little bit, having some fun with that. But kind of been in a rut with some games, struggling to find a way to get back to Ratchet and Clank, which I'm having a great time with it. But it's just, finding that time because doing big adult things. As of time of recording, I have yet to bid on a lot for a new house construction build.
Ooh.
As of episode release, we'll know how that went. Who's to say? It's apparently like a silent auction process. It's going to be super stressful. So that's really what's on my mind right now instead of games.
Huh. I wish you luck with that, honestly. I'll know before the people listening know, probably, because I imagine it'll get brought up next week. Yeah, I'm only, like, slamming my head against multiple games right now because I'm just trying to finish as much on my plate as I can before The World Ends With You and Great Ace Attorney come out on the same day, that day being the day you're listening to this if you're listening at time of release.
Oh my gosh, so many good games coming out. And even if the house thing doesn't come through this month, it's the start of a process, so it's not going to be the end of everything. So we adult fun things. But let's get to talking about the latest in the game industry with some quick composer follow-up news. I'd like to follow up on the composers we've talked about over the show and even some of the games. And how does it match up with some headlines from the game industry over the last week? Well, there's the story that Skull and Bones has just entered alpha after 8 years of development. We talked about Skull and Bones in relation to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which we covered on episode 75 of the show, in that it was kind of an expansion on the pirate ship activities in that Assassin's Creed game, and apparently it's just gone through, change after huge change, after just kind of overloading it and just rehashing it and start again, like year after year, and talent leaving and all this. And there's apparently a contract involved with the government of Singapore to finish the game. So, oh boy, it's a read. I think Kotaku has the story. Go check that out if you're interested in what has happened to Skull and Bones.
Yeah, it's one of the wildest stories so far this year. Like, they were talking at one point about how, we don't know actually if you're going to be playing as a ship or a person, because that seems to change with the direction of the wind.
Oh, yeah, they said it's like, if it were any other studio, this would have been canceled 10 times over.
Yeah, it seems like such a development. This is the most development hell I've ever heard about any game that's not like Duke Nukem Forever. Like, this is up there with that, I feel like. And just the fact that they can't cancel it because they've taken money from the Singapore government is just, it's tragic and also delicious. And I feel so bad for anybody that gets put on that project. Oh, man. In lighter news, though, Lethal League Blaze, which we covered alongside one of its composers, Klaus Wien, in episode 87, that's on Xbox Game Pass this week, baby. Comes out on Thursday, July 29th, and you should all play it, because Lethal League is cool.
I am really excited to give that at least a shot. I mean, that's what Game Pass is for, right?
Yeah.
And finally, Bear McCreary is composing for Netflix's animated series, Masters of the Universe Revelation. Season 1 of that show, by the way, is out now. So, more good Bear McCreary work. Ever since we covered him in our very first episode for his work on 2018's God of War.
I feel like he has come up more than just about any other artist we've covered throughout this show when this follow-up news section. I think second is probably Lena Raine.
Yeah.
Because I feel like she comes up a lot, but Bear McCreary seems to be knocking stuff out, various projects and such, just almost monthly at this point, it feels like.
It is super impressive.
Alright, let's take the impressiveness and lower it down just a little bit, because we're going to talk about Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance. Oh, I can't wait to get into why the game's called that. Because it's somehow not what you think. So this game was originally released for the Nintendo 3DS on March 29th, 2012 in Japan. Europe, Australia, and North America would get it in July of 2012, with Europe getting on the 20th, Australia on the 26th, and North America on the 31st. An HD remaster of it is also part of the Kingdom Hearts HD 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue collection on PS4. I keep forgetting that's what it's called. And it was released in January of 2017. Then it hit Xbox in February of 2020. And then earlier this year, in March of 2021, it is now on PC through the Epic Games Store and costs too much. It was developed by Square Enix, published by Square Enix in Japan and North America, but in Europe and Australia it was apparently published by Nintendo. So that's neat. Nintendo's published a Kingdom Hearts game. They've probably published other Kingdom Hearts games. I just don't care to look into the other ones on Nintendo platforms. It is the 7th game in the Kingdom Hearts series. We have actually talked about 2 other games in the series. Usually, Kingdom Hearts has just sort of coincidentally ended up on big major turning points in the show, with Kingdom Hearts 2 being episode 1 and Kingdom Hearts 1 being episode 100. But in case you haven't listened to either of those, Kingdom Hearts games are action RPGs in which you control a character in real time through combo-based combat. I don't know how to simplify it more than that, but that should do the job. Dream Drop itself introduces a new movement system, though, that they call Flow Motion. Basically, it allows the player to access new abilities such as being able to wall jump, rail grind, spin around poles. Basically turns Sora and Riku into Sonic the Hedgehog in a lot of ways. And this system would actually be tweaked and evolved into the gameplay of what would become Kingdom Hearts 3. Also, during combat, sometimes the player may enter reality shifts, which reality shifts are like a touch-based minigame that is unique to that world. The only one I really remember, there are 2 I remember actually. One is the grid with the code snippets, and one is the Musketeers where it's the comic. Every world has its own unique one. I don't know how they handle it on PS4. I've never seen it.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. It sounds like a very 3DS kind of touch mechanic, but they had to have done it somehow on PS4, right?
Yeah, I genuinely don't know. I'm very interested to find out, actually. The game also introduces a new enemy type called Dream Eaters, which serve as the heartless/nobody/unversed equivalent. So a 4th faction, everybody. Cool. However, they also can serve as the player's party members. You can capture Dream Eaters and use them as your party members to fight alongside you. And it's really too bad that they suck. I hate Dream Eaters. I hate them so much. In Dream Drop Distance, though, you control Sora and Riku, with Riku being a main playable character for the first time since GBA's Chain of Memories, which the less said about that game, the better. The story switches between each character using a mechanic called Drop, which Peter alluded to earlier. While playing your current character, there is a drop meter that is constantly depleting. And when that meter hits 0, your character develops narcolepsy and falls asleep. And that forcibly switches you over to the other character. It's one of the most annoying mechanics the series has ever had. It's such a bad idea. I hate it. And do you remember, were you like me where at a certain point you're just like, no, I'm not switching to Riku right now. Go to sleep, Riku. I'm still working on Sora. I'm in the middle of something.
I had it happen to me in the middle of a boss fight.
I'm pretty sure I also had it happen to me in the middle of a boss fight.
That was kind of a breaking point for me in this game, I think.
Yeah, it's such a bad mechanic. I don't understand what they were thinking. In terms of story, you're going to have to bear with me because this game is actually the hardest game in the series to summarize. So Master Yen Sid, the wizard from Fantasia, who is a very important character in Kingdom Hearts, he is anticipating an upcoming conflict that will affect the fates of the worlds in which the Keyblade wielders will play a central role. So he summons Sora and Riku to take part in the Mark of Mastery exam, where they will hopefully master the Art of Waking. That will be required to rescue allies such as Birth by Sleep's Aqua, Terra, and Ventus. The two delve into sleeping worlds, ones that trapped themselves in a hibernation state after being destroyed by the Heartless before the events of the first Kingdom Hearts, which doesn't make sense as an explanation, and we'll get to why in a minute. And they are tasked with awakening these worlds by finding and unlocking their keyholes. In terms of worlds that you visit, once again, Kingdom Hearts, in case you don't know, is a crossover where you visit various worlds from the Walt Disney Film Library. The ones that are in this game are La Cité des Cloches, which is the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I had to look up how to pronounce cloche because I was going to get it wrong. I was sure of it. The Grid, which is Tron Legacy. Prankster's Paradise / Monstro making a return for Pinocchio. Country of the Musketeers for the Three Musketeers. A comic, I guess, of Mickey, Donald, and Goofy being the Three Musketeers?
I think it was a direct-to-video movie.
That would make sense. And then the weirdest one of all, Symphony of Sorcery, which is a world based on Fantasia, which is actually kind of a neat idea. I actually really like the Symphony, or I remember liking the Symphony of Sorcery. I remember nothing about it other than that it exists. It also features the return of original worlds like Traverse Town and The World That Never Was. And also a major factor in the game, the reason we're talking about Kingdom Hearts 3D today is because it features appearances by Neku Sakuraba, Shiki, Joshua, Beat, and Rhyme from The World Ends With You, making them the first non-Disney and non-Final Fantasy characters to ever cross over into Kingdom Hearts. The decision was made mostly because apparently a large portion of the dev team had also worked on The World Ends With You, and today, as I mentioned earlier, Neo The World Ends With You is out now, and I'm really excited. Please don't suck. So, the questions become, can Sora and Riku awaken the sleeping worlds? Who is this mysterious youth who seems to be following them? That's actually how he's referred to in the Wikipedia article. And does this game's plot overall make any sense whatsoever? It doesn't. So this is where I will ask, Peter, what are our experiences with Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance?
I feel like I played it on 3DS and I got really far. I can't remember where I stopped, but it was pretty close to the end. Then it was a matter of just like, all right, I'll just watch the rest on YouTube. I think it was a rental, and it was just like, I need to trade it back in. And then I tried playing the HD version, and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't like this as much, especially when, you hit a drop that happens in a boss fight. That's very, very frustrating. So it was more of like a kind of like refresher, just like, what happens before Kingdom Hearts 3 kind of thing. Some good moments in the game, some interesting choices of story for Kingdom Hearts, let's put it that way. Some neat worlds that had never been explored before, and some pretty cool music tracks.
Yeah. So here's the thing. This would be the best handheld Kingdom Hearts if Birth by Sleep didn't exist, because all the other competition are bad games. Oh, I don't know about Recoded. Recoded might be good. I've never played it.
Birth by Sleep is still the best, though.
Well, yeah, a lot of people consider Birth by Sleep their favorite game in the series. But look at all its other competition. Yeah, Chain of Memory is one of the worst games I've ever seen, ever. 358 Days Over 2, one of my least favorite games of all time. The quality is wildly varied when it comes to the handheld Kingdom Hearts. I think Dream Drop is fine.
Yeah.
But the drop mechanic and Dream Eaters really, really drag the experience of that game way down. Drop more so than Dream Eaters. I just figured Dream Eaters are useless, man. They're really bad. They don't fight well. And I just want Disney party members back, which Kingdom Hearts 3 then finally gave me.
I didn't need Pokemon in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, I didn't need Pokemon or the other thing. Granted, Dream Eaters brought me my favorite part of the story I'm about to tell for this episode. Because, oh boy. But they're not fun. They're fine as enemies. And then Drop is just, hey, would you like to stop playing the game now for a second? It's, anyways, Kingdom Hearts 3D was developed by the same team that had made Birth by Sleep, actually. With the decision to develop for the 3DS being made when game and series director Tetsuya Nomura, and known writing crimes man, was impressed when he saw the new handheld's tech. Why is the game called Dream Drop Distance? Well, I'm glad you asked. Apparently, it's not because they were scrambling to find an acronym that would be 3D. In fact, they claim that the fact that it happens to be an alliteration of 3Ds is totally a coincidence. Because they wanted to outline the 3 core parts of the game. Dream is for the story, drop is for the gameplay, and distance is for, quote, the main character's interaction, and that they never interact with each other, and that's part of the plot. I don't believe them for a second. I think that they decided to call it Kingdom Hearts 3D and then figured out the acronym from there. I don't believe them that it's a coincidence. It can't be. So, Flow Motion apparently came about because the team wanted the game to feel like it had more action than previous titles in the series. I don't know what that means, because as far as I remember, Dream Drop doesn't have more action than, like, Kingdom Hearts 2.
Well, I mean, if you think about it and you're just running about the world, whereas you could jump off the wall and go, pew!
That's fair. That is fair. I suppose that might be what they meant. But they also wanted to use it to get a chance to ease players into the possible movement system the next game in the series would implement. In terms of the drop mechanic, they wanted it to paint a contrast between it and the structure of Birth by Sleep. See, in Birth by Sleep, there are 3 separate campaigns where you control each of the main characters, the 3 main characters. And in Dream Drop, you're playing 2 campaigns simultaneously. And it sucks.
No, it's bad and you should feel bad.
Like, it's genuinely one of the worst ideas they've ever had in the series. But Dream Eaters, though, they were implemented instead of what they originally planned to just be Heartless and Nobodies again. They were implemented when the game's setting gave the team inspiration to create a new type of creature, which is definitely what Kingdom Hearts needed. And you can take care of and play with your Dream Eater buddies to make them stronger or love you more or something. I don't really remember because I blocked it all out of my mind. And also, I don't think I ever interacted with it outside of like 3 or 4 times before realizing it was bad. And apparently, this was inspired by, and I'm just going to directly quote Wikipedia on this one. Quote, they were also inspired in part by Nintendogs and cats. Nomura wished that his virtual dog could battle with other pets met through Street Pass and created the Dream Eaters based on this concept. So because Nintendo did not give Nomura the dog fighting game he craved, we have Dream Eaters now.
I'm so tempted to make a Michael Vick joke. But maybe I shouldn't.
Nomura, what the hell? I want my dog to be able to fight that person's cat when I pass them in the train. What is wrong with you? That's my favorite thing I discovered in this entire research. So why does the game take place in what is described as the Sleeping Worlds? In the previous release in the series, Kingdom Hearts Recoded, they had already set up the idea that Sora and Riku were going to take part in the Mark of Mastery exam. But apparently they didn't actually seem to have a real idea for what that meant until they started making this game, because the Kingdom Hearts team is making it all up as they go along. They do not have a plan. And then they realized the idea of going through dreams because they were looking at the title of Birth by Sleep. You see, the word sleep is in there. So what if they went to sleep? Far as I can tell, that's the entire logic as to why the game is the way it is. This game's development sounds like a mess.
It also might explain some of the plot points that were chosen for the end of the game.
Maybe. So, the game was officially announced at E3 2010 through one of the system's demos, including a render of Sora, which, if I remember correctly, I remember you talking about that on SMWAN, seeing that.
Oh, there was a 3DS demo on the show floor at E3 that was involved with Kingdom Hearts, but I think it was, if I remember correctly, it's been 11 years. Oh my goodness. It was really just like Sora running around Destiny Islands. I think it was at night and he was just beating up random enemies. I don't think it had anything to do with this is going to be the next Kingdom Hearts game or anything like that.
As far as I can tell, that was basically Square just saying, yeah, we're making a Kingdom Hearts game for this.
Right.
Because the actual game would not be officially announced until 6 months later in January of 2011. They got like a Toho-owned theater to show. Not Toho as in like the Bullet Hell game. Toho
I was wondering.
Godzilla. As in the Godzilla people.
Got it.
And when it came out, it reviewed fine, seemingly. Weirdly enough, Famitsu gave the game a 38 out of 40, which makes it the second highest rated Kingdom Hearts game, with the first being Kingdom Hearts 2. So that's interesting, I guess. It is currently sitting at a 75 on Metacritic, which honestly I think, yeah, I'd maybe go with a 70. I don't know. It performed very well in pre-orders, though, and allegedly, according to both Square and Nintendo, it moved a good amount of 3DS units just by virtue of existing. Because I don't remember how close to the 3DS launch this would have been. I guess it would have been like the year after. So the disaster launch would have already happened. But apparently sales dropped off a bit after the first week, especially compared to 358 over 2 days. The magazine Media Creates actually did a whole poll about it and theorized that the reason the sales numbers weren't looking as good after initial launch was because the DS just had a larger install base than the 3DS did at the time. Because again, when the 3DS first launched, the library was non-existent, so people didn't want to buy it.
Yeah, I think that theory makes sense.
And that pretty much covers all I was able to find about Dream Drop Distance. I mean, the next game in the series would technically be 0.2, I guess, even though that's more of a demo. And then Kingdom Hearts 3 would come out after that. So we have covered the main composer of Kingdom Hearts, Yoko Shimomura. It was the very first episode. She's my favorite composer in the world, and I love her. And then we've also already covered Takeharu Ishimoto, who is the secondary composer on this game. So we're going to cover the third and final piece of the team that tends to do most Kingdom Hearts stuff nowadays. It is Tsuyoshi Sekito. So, Sekito was born on April 3rd, 1963 in Osaka. He specializes in guitar. He joined Konami's sound team in 1989, but then left them a few years later to join Square in 1995. For some reason, though, upon joining Square, he didn't get assigned to do music for anything for 3 years, because his first composition role at the company was for 1998's Brave Fencer Musashi. After collaborating with Kenichi Fukui for various games in the All-Star Pro Wrestling series, the two composers decided to try their hand at arranging music from the Final Fantasy series, and then they showed this work to Nobuo Uematsu, who eventually agreed to join them and form the rock band The Black Mages, with Sekito serving as the group's guitarist.
Oh, that's so cool. Love them.
He also serves as a guitarist in the FF11-centric cover band The Star Onions, which is not as good of a title, or a better title. I can't tell how I feel. And these positions have actually earned him the internal title of Square Enix's King of Rock. He cites bands like Van Halen and Dream Theater as heavy influences on his work, and he also cites the work of film composer Jerry Goldsmith. Now, this man has worked on a lot of games. Some of these I don't recognize the names of, but they seem important to mention. For instance, he has worked with Michiru Yamane twice. We covered her in episode 21 for her work on Castlevania Symphony of the Night, those games being Motocross Maniacs and Space Manbo. What a name. He also apparently worked on the music for SD Snatcher, which was the MSX2 remake of the Kojima game Snatcher. He did the music for Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Back from the Sewers, and Tiny Toon Adventures Buster's Hidden Treasure, which would have been the last game he did at Konami. And again, when he got to Square, first game that he actually did music for was Brave Fencer Musashi. Later on, he would work on a few tracks for Chocobo's Dungeon 2 alongside Kumi Tanioka, which we covered in episode 83 for her work on Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. He is apparently the arranger who did the music for the PlayStation version of Chrono Trigger, which is unfortunate for him. That's one of the main reasons why that version of the game is not very popular. Again, he did All-Star Pro Wrestling 1 through 3, which also Kumi Tanioka worked on that as well. Romancing Saga Minstrel Song. I've never played any of the Romancing Saga games. Isn't there a collection on Switch now?
I think so, yeah.
He did music for Dawn of Mana alongside Masayoshi Soken, who we talked about in episode 72 for his work on Final Fantasy XIV: Realm Reborn. He did music for The Last Remnant, Gyromancer. Then he was officially brought onto the Kingdom Hearts team for Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep alongside Ishimoto and, of course, Shimomura. Unfortunately for him, he did the music for The Third Birthday alongside Shimomura and Mitsuto Suzuki, who we covered in episode 63 when we talked about Final Fantasy VII. He did the music for Mind Jack, which is a game title I ain't heard in a real long time. Again, you have Kingdom Hearts 3D, Dream Drop Distance. He did music for Rise of Mana with Yoko Shimomura and Hiroki Kikuta, who we talked about in episode 65 for their work in Secret of Mana. You have Kingdom Hearts 3, and most recently, he was one of the composers on Final Fantasy VII Remake. He is credited as an arranger on games like Final Fantasy Chronicles, Front Mission Online, Final Fantasy III, the DS version specifically, Dissidia: Final Fantasy, Dissidia 012 Final Fantasy, and Dissidia Final Fantasy. Square is not allowed to name games anymore. And he also was one of the people that worked on the soundtrack for Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. So he's gotten around. He's been in the game for a while. In terms of development research on this game, there wasn't a lot of information. Like I said earlier, soundtrack was composed largely by Yoko Shimomura, but includes works from Takeharu Ishimoto and Tsuyoshi Sekito. There are 3 songs from The World Ends With You that appear in this game, alongside the game's cast, and all 3 were rearranged by Ishimoto, who ruined 2 of them and made the best version of one of them. And I was able to actually find, the closest I could find to information about this is that there's actually a line about Dream Drop in Sekito's Wikipedia article, which is, quote, "In Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance, Sekito felt unrestricted while composing music for the Nintendo 3DS, saying that he was able to create songs that would make a game player feel that they were in a large world, even on a small device, due to the game console's 3D graphics. I don't know what that has to do with the music, but that's the closest I could find."
Yeah, it sure helps when you get to stream sound files instead of have it baked on a sound card.
Yeah, but also, what do the 3D graphics have to do? Yes.
It's just theory with the world and all that. Making a sound big, make the sound go big along. I don't know.
So let's jump into the Critical 5, starting with a remix of a song from another game, because it's the best version of this song. Critical track number 1 is Twister Kingdom Mix.
Select, show me your best at crystal blisters. It's all over now. Psycho cane, Yusuki, 90 more candy cane. Cold K, cold big freak, got a high kick. Mr. Twister, moist with blistering. Take it up, step aside, see the one effects as effects. Take a bow to the moon. Brainwave made with Psycho, got a high kick. Collect, select, show me your best at crystal blisters.
Obviously, this is a rearrangement of an original composition from The World Ends With You by Takeharu Ishimoto, and he did this arrangement as well, and this is the best version of Twister. This version rules. It's so good. And it's the only one of the 3 that manages to be better than the original, the other 2 being Calling and Someday. I actually think that the Kingdom Hearts version of Calling is abysmal. I hate it. And Someday is just sort of weird that he took a song that upbeat and put it slower. It's odd. But this song, oh man, it's so good. And this was the first version of Twister I ever heard. So imagine my surprise when it's not super great in the original game. But this is my favorite song on the soundtrack, which is saying a lot because it's from another game.
Interesting that it's your favorite. I agree with you that this is the best one, and it's also the best arrangement of the tracks that are from The World Ends With You. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's like, oh, actual good recordings of instruments and vocals. We're not suffering with DS compression. Nothing wrong with the DS version, but it's just like, oh, this is like the true vision of what that song was trying to be originally.
And we did later get that for real with Final Remix.
Uh-huh.
Though you have to play Final Remix to hear it in game, and from what I hear, that's not a recommended experience. But yeah, like, this is what the original song I feel like wanted to sound like, and it knocks it out of the park. It's so good. It's so good that I'm pretty sure when they had the song medley that they used to announce the mobile game, the vocals used in that song were specifically from this version of the song. This song is not in Melody of Memory, and it makes me angry because they chose Calling instead, and that's a crime. Anyways, let's get to critical track number 2. This one is going to sound a little more familiar. It is Traverse in Trance. I tend to see this song talked about a lot when people are discussing this game's soundtrack. And I like it. It's very good. It's like this sleepy version of the Traverse Town theme from Kingdom Hearts 1. It's a lot slower. There's a little bit less jazz to it. It honestly kind of feels soothing, which is bizarre for an action RPG, but like, honestly, I think Shimomura going back to visit this song probably for the first time since the GBA, if I am thinking correctly. Yeah, this song just has this feeling of returning to an old friend, and the original Traverse Town is good, and I think I kind of like this version a little bit better.
I think it's a great fresh take on it, especially if it's like, what if this song were sleepy? Do you put more like music box sounds into it? How do you kind of lean into like slow jazz? You throw in some oboe here, you get some saxophone later in the piece. I think it's a really good take on a Kingdom Hearts classic and fitting for what this game tries to do.
Yeah, and I love the idea that it's a sleepy take on, like, Traverse Town fell asleep and the speakers playing this music is just like, 10 more minutes, man. But let's get rid of all the good dreams and get to critical track number 3, Dream Eaters. I kind of hate that I like this song. I kind of really hate that I like this song a lot, because this is the song that plays when you're like playing with them and leveling them and caring for them. Again, I don't fully remember what you do with Dream Eaters because that mechanic sucks and I didn't interact with it very often. But this song is very catchy, actually. Like, Yoko Shimomura found a way to make an annoying thing and at least make it sound good, because she's a genius and I love her. It's just got this really cute and charming thing. And you could also kind of, I feel like, hear bits and pieces of the Nintendogs inspiration to create the Dream Eaters in the first place. I don't know how much of that is intentional, but like, I don't know. This song's just kind of cute and kind of charming, even though I hate Dream Eaters with a passion. This is one you'll hear quite a bit if you decide to mess with that mechanic.
That's a really good point, I think. Taking Nintendo's inspiration not only for the game concept, but creating the light, happy, peppy mood that this goes with. Adding vocals to it even. I think even if it's la 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 or, something of the equivalent, I think it's a nice touch. And I think you're right. I didn't spend that much time in the world of the Dream Eaters and all the menu and navigation there, but this song would have made it easier to deal with, I think.
I hope the laws are Shimamura herself. I couldn't find... It's probably a sample. I couldn't find a name for the vocals. I just hope it's Yoko Shimamura herself. Following that is critical track number 4. It is a boss theme, but not like a major boss theme. Just a boss theme. It's Rinsler Recompiled. If I remember correctly, I think Rinsler's the only one that gets his own boss theme that's not like a major series villain. I don't remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. This is when you fight Rinsler on the grid, and then it throws all semblance of the plot of the Sleeping Worlds making any sense, because then Rinsler recognizes Sora because he's actually Tron. And it doesn't make any sense that happens. And I still to this day don't understand how that works. But this is a really good song. A really, really good song. Does it sound like Daft Punk? No. Should this fight probably have had some arrangement of either DiDDY'S or more appropriately Adagio for Tron? Yeah. But also I'm glad it's not. Because Kingdom Hearts is already a DMCA nightmare to stream. And I don't need another thing added to that list of reasons. But it's this really, really tense feeling piece that, it feels like what if Yoko Shimamura scored Tron Legacy, which is exactly what it should sound like. And I really, really like this song to a surprising degree.
I feel bad that I don't remember this one in the game, because I remember the boss fight, but this one's really cool. It's classic Shimamura, but I really like it.
This is the boss fight that I dropped in the middle of. And also, I remember that I was having a huge amount of trouble with the boss, because for the first time in series history, I had to pay attention to the level suggestion. And I could either go to Hunchback or to the grid. And I went to the grid because that's the world I wanted to see more than Hunchback. And then I got to Rinsler and he just demolished me.
Oops.
So, yeah. All right. Final critical track. Critical track number 5. It is The Eye of Darkness. The original piece, Destati, which is what this is based on, a classic Kingdom Hearts piece. The classic Kingdom Hearts piece, basically. That was obviously composed by Yoko Shimamura, but this version was arranged by Tsuyoshi Sekito. Hey. So there you go, we got him in there. There are other final boss themes that I like better. Yes, this game has multiple final boss themes. Sora and Riku both get their own, and then there's a final boss you fight as Riku. And that's the boss that this song plays in. And I think it just makes it important enough to be here. And again, man, Destati is so good. And hearing the new stuff they do with it in almost every Kingdom Hearts game never ceases to be amazing, and I just really love it.
Yeah, talk about coming full circle. Not only bringing back Destati, one of the first pieces you hear in the original Kingdom Hearts, but have it be these high stakes in this kind of final battle. Yeah, it's a great piece.
In terms of tracks on the cutting room floor, though, you got a couple, and I want to hear them.
Okay, one of them for me is All for One. Look, you play this song, I think everyone could have a feeling that it's at the very least Yoko Shimomura. You could probably determine that it's a Kingdom Hearts piece. It's got that bouncy energy to it. Does it seem like a normal battle theme for a level? I mean, maybe, but it's kind of intense for one. And this is for the country of the Musketeers, so you get the Three Musketeers world. Did the Three Musketeers need an interpretation? Did it need a Kingdom Hearts world? Probably not, but if it gave us this piece, I'm okay with it.
Not only did it not need a Kingdom Hearts interpretation, it also is the other part that doesn't make sense. What are the sleeping worlds? Why is Mickey here? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's a weird one for sure.
I do really love this song, though. The violin is fantastic. It's super manic and fun sounding.
Just amazing recording there, and mixing in the oboe as well. It's so fun, so exciting. The other one for me is my favorite song from the soundtrack, and it's L'Impeto Oscuro. L'Impeto Oscuro translates out to the dark impetus, and that actually makes sense when you consider that it plays during Riku's boss fight against young Xehanort. Oh yes, this game does some weird things with its story at the end.
This game is generally considered the jump the shark moment in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, fair, because when we're talking about young Xehanort, what does that mean? Oh, it tries to tell you. But I love this song. It is just such a spellbinding endgame boss fight track. And, we're talking about from one cutting room floor track being this bouncy, happy Kingdom Hearts vibe. This is like the perfect quintessential dark Kingdom Hearts boss fight. This is perfect Shimomura. I love this song so much, and you know what? I wish it came back in some other form in some other game, but for it being this battle right here, it works just fine.
Yeah, I think it might also be my favorite of the final boss themes, but I don't know, something made it feel more right to put Eye of Darkness in there. So this would have been the one if not for that, for sure. For my cutting room floor tracks, the first one I have one that's a world song from one of the Disney worlds, and then one that is a battle song from one of the Disney worlds, with the world song being La Cloche. This is the music that plays in the Hunchback of Notre Dame world, and this movie is way too serious to be in Kingdom Hearts. Just a little bit. But Yoko Shimomura went hard on how this world sounds. This song feels sinister and drab, and then you have the church choir in the back because it's about Notre Dame, and you're walking into a movie where, the main threat is that a guy really wants to sleep with another girl and goes nuts because...
Religion.
Yeah, religion and also racism, and this movie should not be in Kingdom Hearts.
But you know what? I'm really glad it is. To be honest, I'm glad it finally got some representation. You're right, even if it is a little darker than Disney's usual 90s flair. But this one, it's just sounds so good, and it almost sounds Castlevania-like, which I'm impressed that Shimomura kind of reached these depths.
Yeah, I could hear that. I could hear this in a Castlevania game, for sure. But then we're gonna, take that... You know the vibe we now have from that song? We'll throw it in the lake. You don't need it anymore because my second Cutting Room 4 track is Prankster's Party. So this plays in a fight when you're in Prankster's Paradise. I'm pretty sure the actual place in the movie is called Pleasure Island, but maybe I'm nuts.
I think that's right.
But I really like this song because it's just sort of hectic and fun. And honestly, when I hear the song, the first thing I think about is it's very similar in vibe to the battle music in Kingdom Hearts 1 when you're fighting in Wonderland.
Yeah.
The To Our Surprise. That's the vibe I get from this. I really, really like this song. It's probably my favorite regular world battle song in the game.
It's that same kind of vibe as All for One, which is the happy, bouncy Kingdom Hearts music. Some people could also draw comparisons to Mario and Luigi battle music, and I think that's also fair.
So what will I never forget about Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance? I don't know. I'll never forget the stuff that mattered in Kingdom Hearts 3. Because I've had to make myself remember that. I remember almost nothing about the general course of this game. It's one of the ones I'm most interested in seeing Matt play because I genuinely don't know how it's going to go, but I have a few guesses.
It definitely had some frustrations to it. I'll never forget its very ending of who gets Keyblades? And how did they not deliver on that in Kingdom Hearts 3? Or at least... before DLC? I don't know. I didn't play the DLC yet to Kingdom Hearts 3. What the heck?
My favorite part about the ending of that is who fails the Mark of Mastery and who doesn't, which I thought was the funniest thing in the world.
But also very obvious.
Yeah. Riku is the protagonist of Kingdom Hearts. I've been trying to explain this to Matt for months. Riku is the main character of Kingdom Hearts. The camera just follows Sora for some reason.
Yeah, he's the one you want to put your emotional stock in for sure.
So, for a transition, usually we would cover a fan remix, but look, I'm going to be real. This is the weakest soundtrack in the Kingdom Hearts series. We've covered some damn good tracks, but overall, this game does not have the best soundtrack in comparison to most of the other games in the series. So nobody has really remixed anything specifically from this game. I could just cheat and go grab a remix of Dearly Beloved again, probably for the third time. But no. I'm the only one that thinks the Kingdom Hearts version of Calling is bad, apparently.
No, it's not great. You're right.
And so now you all have to hear it because you did this to me somehow. We'll be right back.
We go from Sora and Riku to Diddy and Dixie. This is Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest. We talked about the original Donkey Kong Country, or rather, Joe, you did, on episode 58 of the show. And then you brought Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze and its composer, David Wise, to the show on episode 99. I guess there was also a game called Donkey Kong 64 on episode 15. I guess.
It's okay. You don't need to hide it. We all know that's the best game.
All right, if you say so. So, Super Donkey Kong 2, Dixie and Diddy.
That's such a better title.
Yeah, it is. This released November 21st, 1995 in Japan for Super Famicom. North America and Europe would get Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest for Super Nintendo in December 1995. There was a Game Boy Advance version of this game, and it released in 2004. And then the original SNES version was re-released for Wii Virtual Console in 2007, Wii U Virtual Console in 2015 as well. And it is currently available through the Nintendo Switch Online Services game library. So you can play it right now if you have Nintendo Switch Online. Donkey Kong Country 2 is developed by Rare and published by Nintendo. It is a 2D side-scrolling platformer where you control Diddy Kong or Dixie Kong. And each has different abilities. So Diddy is more agile and will run faster, whereas Dixie has a higher jump and you can spin her hair in order to glide. You go through 52 levels over 8 worlds. You can defeat enemies by jumping on them, cartwheeling into them, or throwing barrels at them. And so the other Kong follows the one that you're controlling on screen. When you get hit, that Kong leaves the screen and control shifts to the other one. You can recover the original Kong by finding and throwing a DK barrel in the level, but if you get hit again when there's only one Kong, you die, you lose a life, and you go back to either the start of that level or if you reached that halfway checkpoint. So, can you complete all of the levels and bosses, all of the bonus challenges? Do you collect Kong, these little letters that are spread out in each level? Do you collect all the DK coins? Did you visit each member of the Kong family? Lots of things to do for full 102% completion on your save file. The plot of Donkey Kong Country 2. Let's go to Wikipedia to summarize this best. Quote, sometime after Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong is relaxing on the beach until he is ambushed by the Kremlings. He gets kidnapped and brought to Captain K. Rool, King K. Rool's moniker in this game, who then demands the banana hoard he unsuccessfully tried to steal in the previous game for a ransom from the Kongs. Instead of complying, Diddy Kong and his friend Dixie resolve to go to the Kremlings' home island, Crocodile Isle, to rescue Donkey Kong. The big question, can Diddy and Dixie rescue Donkey Kong by defeating Captain K. Rool? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest?
I have talked about in multiple avenues how one of the things that got me into video games in the first place was watching my uncle play through Donkey Kong Country 1 through 3. Like, all the time. When I went over there, he'd load up that game and I'd just watch him beat one of them. But I have never beaten it myself, which at the beginning of the show I mentioned, I'm currently working my way through it right now. I am at World 4, like stopped right before playing the first level of World 4. So I'm little under halfway there, I guess. It is generally considered to be the best game in the original trilogy, as far as I'm aware. It's also like one of the best game soundtracks ever written, especially from that era. So yeah, I like it a lot, but I personally have never beaten it, and I'm hoping to fix that within the next week or so.
Yeah, it's a really impressive soundtrack that David Wise composed, and so I'm happy to cover it finally, certainly on the show, even though Donkey Kong Country 2 is a game I have never played. And it's one that I can see how it'd be enticing to watch, especially at the time in the mid-90s. That's a great-looking game on Super Nintendo, you know, using that kind of 3D sprite technology, and it kind of increases the animation style on it, just looks really appealing. I feel like it might be hard for me, though. See, I didn't grow up with 2D platformers, and I feel like that would be really tough for me. But I don't know. Maybe with save states it might be easier on Nintendo Switch Online there.
Well, this is also considered to be, I think, the hardest of the three.
Right, yeah.
Later levels of Donkey Kong Country 2, as far as I remember, Do not mess around.
Oh, I'd believe it. I'd believe it for sure. Because the development of Donkey Kong Country 2 started shortly after the launch of Donkey Kong Country, but before its big commercial success. And the team wanted to implement ideas that couldn't make it into the first game, as well as they heard player feedback, and as a result, yes, you're right, made this game more difficult. Rare's team was so young at the time that it apparently emboldened them to disregard risks, so as a result, they decided that Diddy Kong should be the main character for the sequel, as a way to surprise players. There were several working titles that were considered for the game, including DK Rescue, Diddy's Way Out, Diddy's Wild Country, and Diddy's Wild Frontier.
Diddy's Way Out sounds like a game where you play as Diddy Kong escaping prison. I'd play that. Make that.
Yeah, that sounds great. It makes me think of like Dunstan Checks In for some reason. I don't know if it's just like monkey related media at the time. But then they decided on Diddy Kong's Quest. That was what they originally decided on, but then they slightly altered it into Diddy's Kong Quest to create a play on the word conquest. Yes, this is the point where, if you have not realized by now, the game's title is Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Kong Quest, not Diddy Kong's Quest. I feel like it's one of those Mandela effect kind of things like Berenstain Bears, where, I mean, alongside with like Miles Tails Prower, people realizing the Miles Prower pun, things like that have existed like in front of your face, but like you just haven't realized that it was actually the case until now.
Mm-hmm. And pointing it out sometimes makes people very upset that they did not notice earlier. It's fun.
We'll have a case like this in our Critical 5, but we'll get there. So yes, it is Diddy's Conquest, and there's over there Rare. They're so punny, and it's delightful, honestly. When we're talking about Dixie Kong, though, apparently 50 names were considered for Dixie, including Didden, D, Daisy, Dandy, Dolly, Dizzy, Danny, Dippy, and Ducky.
Didden is just a Pokemon.
Yeah, like with only one N instead of two. Ducky makes you think of The Land Before Time, so like that's just out. Can't do that. The team initially opted for Diddy-Ann with like one N?
No.
No. You can't do it. Before they finally decided on Dixie. Dixie is the right choice, honestly. And apparently the creation of Dixie came at the expense of Donkey Kong's fiancé, Candy Kong.
Wait, she's his fiancé now?
So says Wikipedia, who also says, quote, who was removed from the game's cast due to Nintendo's concerns over her sexually provocative nature.
I mean, to be fair, in every game that Candy shows up in, I'm wildly uncomfortable every time I see her.
I mean, that's the right reaction.
DK64 and DK Country 1 are the worst of it, though.
Yeah, when you start to actually get the 3D model into it, it does get even weirder. So, like its predecessor, the game utilizes silicon graphics and advanced computer modeling rendering technology, in which pre-rendered images are modeled as 3D objects and then transformed into 2D sprites and background layers. This is the big revolutionary technology you mentioned in the Donkey Kong Country episode. It continued into this game, and the game's pirated theme, narrative, and level design was influenced by designer Greg Mills' fascination with the golden age of piracy. So yeah, it's like, let's take the content from the first game, give it a pirate theme, make it Diddy and Dixie. It's just a grand old time. Apparently there was a port to Virtual Boy that was planned, but never released, and that's probably for the best. Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest reviewed very well at its launch, with a 90% game rankings average for the Super Nintendo version. The ports to Game Boy Advance and Wii Virtual Console are seen slightly less favorably, at around 80%. The game was praised as being longer, more graphically impressive, and more fun than the original Donkey Kong Country, but players may be put off by its difficulty. And, this is at a time where, even though the game came out like the next year, they were like, well, it's not so revolutionary on its gameplay. So a lot of reviews were just like, well, I guess the gameplay falls into the if it ain't broke, don't fix it camp. Like, maybe it wasn't as revolutionary or didn't, iterate too much on what came before, but you got to realize the turnaround time on this one, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, it adds a good amount of stuff. Like, I don't remember if you mentioned that this game adds the ability to, like, throw the other Kong if they're around, which I always think about because when Matt was streaming Donkey Kong Country 1 and was trying to get something, somebody in the chat was like, this is painful, throw the other Kong, and then left the stream before anybody could say, like, they added that in the next one, right? That wasn't a thing in this one? Okay, cool.
Thanks, stream lurker. Well, Donkey Kong Country 2 sold more than 5 million copies worldwide on Super Nintendo. And this was less than the original Donkey Kong Countries of more than 9 million, but it was also the second best-selling game of 1995 after Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, and it would ultimately outsell that game to become the 6th best-selling game all time on Super Nintendo. In fact, it's the best-selling game that never came bundled with the system. Which I found that's a pretty neat statistic there. The Game Boy Advance version sold an additional 630,000 copies. Game awards weren't really too much of a thing at the time. If anything, it was like this magazine gave it an award. So GamePro awarded the game Best SNES Game of 1995, and the Video Software Dealers Association named it Video Game of the Year. As far as its legacy, it would have a sequel the next year in Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, where Dixie would partner with Kiddy Kong, and that was released for Super Nintendo in 1996. Then you'd get a few years later with Donkey Kong 64 on Nintendo 64 in 1999. You got Donkey Kong Country Returns in 2010 on Wii, Tropical Freeze on Wii U in 2014. There's a rumor going about that the Super Mario Odyssey team is working on the next Donkey Kong game. We'll see if that ever comes true or is ever really a thing.
Give me another Donkey Kong 3D collectathon. Oh my god, I hadn't heard about this until now.
What? Oh, this was huge around E3. Everyone thought this was going to be an E3 thing. But I don't know. We'll see. So as we mentioned, for the music, David Wise composed the music for Donkey Kong Country 2. And it's a fantastic soundtrack. Oh gosh, who do we cover for this game then? Because this is a soundtrack we had to cover on the show. But who do we go to? And so we go to one of the other big names in Rare's sound team at the time. Had nothing to do with this game. I'm sorry, it's a bit of a tangent. Sometimes you gotta make do. So let's talk about Graeme Norgate this week. And Graeme Norgate was born on March 20th, 1971 in Chingford, East London in the UK. He currently is based out of Nottingham. He works under the alias of Virez, V-I-R-E-Z, or at least he did back when he'd remix music for different bands. And he started to kind of open his eyes to what he wanted to do as a career after school when he discovered, listening to the music for Commodore 64 games. But it took until the Amiga for him to start composing and do what he said, quote, get the rubbish out of his system. So kind of get some of those early compositions out of the way. In 1991 and 1992, he would play synthesizer and program drums for the bands FWNT and The Catch. And he originally worked at a bank before joining Rare in 1994. From there, he would move to help co-found Free Radical Design, which impressed players and critics with its PS2 launch title, Time Splitters. Eventually, Free Radical Design would be bought out by Crytek to become Crytek UK, where Graeme Norgate was the audio director. When Crytek UK closed, he moved to Deep Silver Dambuster Studios, and this studio may be working on Dead Island 2? It's hard to say. It's that, trailer of, following up to Dead Island where it's like the guy on the rollerblades, the roller skates, and I'm a bomb and about to blow up, and then he gets eaten by a zombie. And then it went into development hell, but then it popped back up on like a Deep Silver financial report that it could have come out in 2020, and no one knows what's going on. So that's apparently where Graeme Norgate is still today, as far as I could tell.
I just kind of assumed that game had already come out.
No, I don't think it did. I think it was a COVID setback kind of thing. I don't know. It's a lot to kind of take in, like what Deep Silver and all of like the THQ Nordic, is that even like the same bundled in? I don't know. It feels like kind of bundled in that whole same world of developers and whatnot. So yeah, that's apparently still a thing. Dead Island 2. But I found an interview with Graeme Norgate where he mentioned, quote, "I like working with technological limitations because it makes you concentrate on what's important, the melody. Also, you have to work a lot smarter to make your work stand out." And I feel like that's been a continuing theme that we've seen from composers. And yeah, I really do like and appreciate that. You can follow Graeme Norgate on Twitter at Norgans, Norgans, and he's on Bandcamp. You can find him at Graeme Norgate, GraemeNorgate. So Graeme Norgate's discography includes some games at Rare and some games at Free Radical Design for composition work. He started at Rare on the original Killer Instinct. He also worked on Donkey Kong Land, Blast Corps, GoldenEye 007 is one of his big notable contributions there. He worked on the sound effects and sound effect design for Diddy Kong Racing. Then he got back into it with Jet Force Gemini and Perfect Dark before he moved on to Free Radical Design, where he composed for Time Splitters 2, Time Splitters Future, and Time Splitters Future Perfect. Some other games in his discography that I hadn't really heard of include Second Sight, Carnival Blast, Crack Attack, Twist Pilot, and Polyology. Well, that's a fun mouthful of a name. That's interesting. When he became that audio director at Crytek UK, he was an audio director on Haze, and then the Crisis trilogy, of course, for Crytek, and Homefront: The Revolution. So, important, I think, to cover Graeme Norgate, not necessarily in the context of Donkey Kong Country 2, but also a notable Rare composer for the time, because the music for this soundtrack is really all about David Wise. And if you want to hear his story, Joe covered him in episode 99 with our talk on Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. So this soundtrack maintains similarity to its predecessor with its prominent percussion and also a bunch of eclectic genres that range between big band, disco, and hip hop. There were certain themes that were reminiscent of compositions by Vangelis and Phil Collins. David Wise cited Koji Kondo's music for the Mario and Zelda games, as well as Jeff and Tim Follin's music for Pluck, as well as synthesizer-based film soundtracks that were released in the 1980s, and these were all influences in creating the music for the Donkey Kong Country series as a whole. For the sound synthesizer fans out there, apparently, as with its predecessor, the music was produced for the SNES's SPC 700 chip for the game to sound similar to the Korg Wave Station synthesizer. Just had to throw that out there. I'm sure someone out there appreciates that. This game apparently had a soundtrack CD release that was released on November 1st, 1995, before the game even came out in Japan, much less the West. As you mentioned, Joe, this is an incredible soundtrack, especially for what was possible at the time. So let's get to the Critical 5 tracks for Donkey Kong Country 2. And we start with a fun little ditty. This is Jib Jig. Normally we talk about games that open and like their first levels are really important for kind of setting that kind of established feel, right? Well, the track Klomp's Romp is what plays first in Donkey Kong Country 2 when you get to control the Kongs and you're on like the top deck of a pirate ship. And it's a weird, like, low groaning piece, and it's not the best musical introduction, I think, to the game. However, Jib Jig first plays in Main Brace Mayhem, which is the second level of World 1. And I feel like this is the song that kind of, like, gets in your head with its super catchy melody. I think it does a really good job kind of starting with this stormy atmosphere, and you get this percussion that almost sounds like, rapping on wood, or you get sounds that are like steps on a wooden plank, make sense for a pirate ship. And then this incredibly catchy fiddle jig that comes in. You get the supporting plucked string arpeggios. It's just a delightful track, and I feel like this is where the music really kicks in and sets the mood for this game.
I agree with you 100%, and I'm going to have to be careful to not say that every single track we talk about is my favorite track in the game. I genuinely don't know which one I like the best, but this is definitely up there. I mean, I love myself, like, some piratey fiddle music. It's a genre that, weirdly enough, I don't feel like video games get to approach very often.
Yeah.
But when they do, it's always great, and this is, I think, one of the best.
Another track that stands out as just being fantastic. Number 2 on the Critical 5 here. This is Lockjaw's Saga. Lockjaw's theme here, Lockjaw's Saga. We've heard a Lockjaw theme before in the Tropical Freeze episode, and it's really neat to come back and hear what started it. I mean, as amazing as the Lockjaw Saga is in Tropical Freeze, hearing it here on these Super Nintendo instruments and have it just sound as good, honestly. Granted, it's not the crisp high fidelity of some of those recorded instruments, but for what's accomplished at the time here, I think it's just incredible. This first plays in Lockjaw's Locker, which is the 4th level of World 1. And if you know the theme, it's a brilliant counterplay between these strings and then the low brass that comes in, just with like this deep throbbing percussion as if something is lurking under the water. And that would be Lockjaw. I know you love this theme, Joe, and you mentioned so in Tropical Freeze. I mean, what is hearing it here and hearing it when you play Donkey Kong Country 2? What's that like?
I absolutely adore this song. I think I like the Tropical Freeze version a little bit better just because of quality of instruments. But like, again, I want to say this is my favorite song in the game, but then I also want to say that about the next 2 critical tracks, and also both my cutting room floor tracks. And also kind of both your cutting room floor tracks. It's hard, but this is for sure like top 2 at the very least. I love Lockjaw's Saga. It has just this tension that it's more tense than just about any other song in the game, I feel like, which is such a departure from aquatic ambiance being the theme of water levels in the first game.
Yeah.
And it's like Wise looked at that and was like, yeah, I wrote one of like the best water level tracks ever. But what if I just did the exact opposite?
What if I made you stressed out while you were swimming instead of totally relaxed?
Like it's such an interesting departure from what it is in the first game, and I absolutely adore Lockjaw's Saga. It is such a good piece.
But you're right, though. The hits just keep on coming. Number 3 on their Critical 5 for Donkey Kong Country 2 is Snaky Chanty. This piece first plays in Rattle Battle, which is the 4th level of World 3. Definitely reminiscent of when you turn into a snake and you're bouncing all around. It's just a good time. As far as the track goes, it is definitely reminiscent in its opening of Donkey Kong Country's Gangplank Galleon, although then it transitions into more of a ragtime piano, and it sounds so good. Transitions then into like these synth horns, like almost an accordion. It's kind of hard to say like what the instrument is trying to emulate, I think, at the time, but oh, it sounds so good. It's so positive and so happy. I mean, counter, Lockjaw's Saga, all the dark tension with just a happy, fun piece. Love this one.
I was so excited when I heard that this song was getting a remix in Ultimate. And it is such a good remix. Yeah, you nailed it. It's fun. This song just sounds fun. This is one of the levels I was actually playing about 20 minutes before we recorded. I love the vibe of this song. It's so good.
You just hear the smile on your face, and I think that really says it all. This one has to be here, though. Number 4 on the Critical 5. This is Sticker Bush Symphony. I have needed to reprogram myself because I thought this song was Sticker Brush Symphony for years. And perhaps that was thanks to a mistagged Super Smash Bros. Brawl soundtrack rip, where their take on the song that they titled Bramble Blast. Fittingly enough, Sticker Bush Symphony first plays in Bramble Blast, which is the 6th level in World 3. But yeah, I feel like for years I had thought that it was, it's Sticker Brush Symphony. No, the internet, in a very jarring Mandela effect to me, pointed out that it is Sticker Bush Symphony, and I have never been the same since discovering that months ago.
So like you sent that to me around the same time that you noticed that. And it was like David Wise, I think something about it was like, yeah, we almost didn't use this song, etc., etc. And I thought that's why you had sent it to me, because my brain auto added the R in the song title. Because I'm the same way. I assume it was pretty much just because of that Brawl track. Yeah, it's hard to get used to that, but yeah, it's Sticker Bush. And this is also another level that I played right before recording.
Having all those rotating barrels and you gotta shoot yourself from one barrel to the next.
It's like a barrel labyrinth. It's really weird.
Yeah, with all the bramble and the sticky thorns kind of in the background behind you. But, I mean, my goodness, what a track. It's a legendary Super Nintendo track. It's a legendary 16-bit track. I feel like it's the track that launched a bunch of people to go to OC Remix and try to have their take on, reimagining video game music and try to tinker with different synthesizers and things like that. It is a gorgeous blending of several instrument layers, and I think it's just a tremendous accomplishment for the time, whether it's the synths, the piano, the percussion, the bass. It all comes together so well in this iconic soundscape. But honestly, when I was introduced to this song for the first time with that Super Smash Bros. Brawl remix, and then went back to this one, I feel like the Brawl track did it so much better justice, and I can appreciate this track now, but at the time I was like, oh yeah, this is better in Brawl here.
Oh, the Brawl version is so good. The fact that it's a violin is one of the best parts of the whole thing. Translates super well. The little string pizzicato does super good. I love the original version, but I agree the Brawl version is like 10 steps above it.
We absolutely had to have this track here, though. Like, it's a must when you're talking about Donkey Kong Country 2. And I feel like to wrap up the Critical 5, it is fitting to mention Crocodile Cacophony. This is seen as K. Rool's theme, and it plays during the final boss fight, and oh my goodness, what an intense song. Just so good, with these percussion and strings just setting the tone right off the bat of the song, and it just never backs down. I feel like, if anything, the lower notes, especially on Super Nintendo, when we compared it, last week we talked about like how Sega Genesis did great with low notes, and how on Super Nintendo, the lower notes kind of struggle. So I feel like as a result, it kind of sounds a little muddled by comparison, which then makes the remix of Crocodile Cacophony in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate sound amazing when you have the high fidelity and the big range of frequencies that you hear the genius of this piece kind of shine through. But it's a great track, especially for a famous final boss against Captain K. Rool. I mean, my goodness, just another standout on the soundtrack.
Everybody's going to be mad at me. I don't like this song all that much. Like, it's fine. Like, I don't think there's any bad tracks on this soundtrack. It's a nearly perfect soundtrack. But honestly, this is one of my least favorite songs on the soundtrack. I think it's near the bottom for me. But I like Final Boss. Makes sense. And the Ultimate version is very good, even though it's less a remix and more like a full orchestration.
Yeah.
But yeah, this song doesn't do anything for me. I don't know why.
Okay. Well, tell me about the songs that do it for you on the cutting room floor. Joe, you got a couple. Hit me with them.
I sure do. One of my favorite songs in the game, alongside all the other favorite songs in the game, is Hot Head Bop. This song first plays in Hothead Hop, which is the first level in World 2. And then this song plays pretty much in every lava level for the rest of the game. And I don't know, I really, really like this song a lot. And there's a particular OC remix version of this song that I believe you're using for the transition that I can't help but sing along every time I hear this song. I don't know, something about it just... When it goes real quiet with that piano, it's such a good moment. And I don't know how to really explain why I really, really like Hothead Bop, but it's such a good song.
I feel like the bass and the percussion do such a good job giving you that lava feel, right? We talked about last week with Rocket Knight Adventures and how it didn't sound like the composers knew that this was going to go to a lava cave, magma cave, whatever you want to call it, level. No, this one nails it, knew exactly what was going on, and it supports that perfectly, but then brings some of that fun and whimsy of, the platforming that you're doing with that piano, and like it fits so well. It's a great track.
Yeah, I love it a lot. For one that I think is probably a weird one for me to pick, I really like the song Mining Melancholy. So this song first plays in Cannon's Claim, which is the second level of World 2. It's not on the full published soundtrack, and I still don't understand why. I learned that years ago when I went digging for this song because I liked it. This plays usually in the mine levels, not mine cart. Mine, just you're in a mine.
Got a bunch of crystals around you, yeah.
I mean, I just kind of have a weakness for, like, mine level themes where most of the percussion is done with, like, the sounds of the mining. I think it's really cool every time it happens, and this is one of my favorite examples of it. It's really, really interesting, and I don't understand why it's not on the official release.
Yeah, just odd that it's not on that CD. Go figure. But yes, I think when you're talking about caves and mines and crystals, the percussion to be like, it's like almost banging on pots or something like that. Something about it like gives it that perfect sound that really exemplifies like the environment that you're in. And it's another like, oh, it's perfect. It fits so well.
It's just so interesting whenever songs like this are just like, yeah, we're going to use what could be diegetic sound effects.
Yes.
And that's what the music is in here. And it's just so cool how people like approach doing that concept.
Yeah. Almost like you could have people working in the background like with pickaxes, like striking at these crystals. Fantastic. I have a couple tracks on the cutting room floor myself. The first of these is Forest Interlude. Joe, you'll be hearing this one soon in your playthrough because this first plays in Web Woods, which is the 5th level of World 5. I just love the gorgeous atmosphere this sets up, and then this pan flute melody comes in. Are you kidding? Like, for as many forest songs are in Super Nintendo games, much less ones that we've covered, this one stands out as just a fantastic one. And apparently this is David Wise's favorite track on the soundtrack. He had a tweet that says, quote, "The SNES didn't have resonant filters. I multi-sampled my Juno at different filter cutoff frequencies down to single cycle waveforms and emulated this and portamento in the code." And when this sounds like next level for Super Nintendo, it's because David Wise is doing next level stuff. It sounds amazing.
See, the thing that always jumps out at me about this song is the fact that some of the percussion, again, sounds diegetic because it's bird chirps.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a forest and bird chirps are some of the percussion in this song. That's so good. I adore Forest Interlude. Again, it's up there for me as well.
So smart. For the other one, I almost had Disco Train. Disco Train is a really fun song. Go check it out if you have never heard it before. But I have to put as my other cutting room floor track, Bonus Intro. Because honestly, for all of the bonus stages that you'll go to, you will hear this song so much. And it gets you hyped every single time. It's a fantastic song. Just this swingy, jazzy brass piece that comes in. And more often than not, you're progressing forward and it's going to transition into a take on Donkey Kong Country's Jungle Hijinks. You know, the da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. But, I mean, this piece is just iconic to this game, I think. A lot of people point to it as like, yeah, this is Donkey Kong Country 2, and it's an important piece that plays.
Like, I think I like the bonus music in DK Country 1 a little bit better, but, like, this is definitely one of those where when this track was Disco Train on the outline, it was one of those where I was like, I wish I could justify, like, taking one of my slots and putting it into this. So I'm glad it did show up, even though, yeah, Disco Train is very good.
I did see the light. Yeah, it had to be done. So, what will I never forget about Donkey Kong Country 2? Actually, with bonus intro, it makes me think of The Completionist. And Gerard Khalil uses that song a lot near the end of his shows because Donkey Kong Country 2 is super important to him, one of his favorite games of all time. He always talks about how he would plan on ending the show. His final run the last game would be Donkey Kong Country 2. And so I hear that melody, I think of him and his show, oddly enough, because I have not played Donkey Kong Country 2. But, you know, if I am bored with my Switch sometime and I have, you know, let's fire up Nintendo Switch Online, it may be a game I give a go.
Yeah, with rewind and save states, I'm having a much better time than I feel like I'd have normally because I don't have a lot of patience.
Yep.
But I'm always going to remember watching my uncle play these. And so I had never beaten a Donkey Kong Country game myself outside of like Returns and Tropical Freeze. I'd never beaten any of the original trilogy myself until we played Country 1 for Smash Pieces. And now that 2 and 3 are both on Nintendo Switch Online, I think I'm gonna fix the fact that I've never beaten those either. So looking forward to it.
That sounds good. I'm really glad we got to cover these games this week and their dual protagonists that control switches when you least expect or want it to. But yeah, wow, just great songs overall, great tracks, great soundtracks as a whole, and good additions to original Soundchat. That will do it for us this week. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakEasy. Joe is over at StringPixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast that you want, hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. It's where Joe's other podcast, Smasterpieces, is hosted, and you can find Smasterpieces and original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts, all around the globe. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, where we have a feed with our podcast episodes, but we also have a Spotify playlist, where if we cover a video game song, and it's on Spotify, it's getting added to this big monster playlist. Joe, anything added this week?
No. Obviously, Donkey Kong Country 2, first-party Nintendo game. That ain't anywhere on there. And Kingdom Hearts, Square still has not put anything from before Kingdom Hearts 3 on Spotify. And also, hey, Square, you know what would be super cool? A week or so before the new one comes out, maybe put The World Ends With You on Spotify, please. Come on. Where is it?
Didn't Fate Zero stuff get added?
Yes, that is true. Though I'm not putting that on the playlist, obviously, because I didn't put any of the anime stuff on the playlist. But yeah, basically, I think a bunch of Fate soundtracks from various different series and things and stuff got dumped on Spotify recently. So if you're a fan of those, hey, they're there now.
When you're done listening, you can find us on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us, suggestions of games to cover in the future. That's one of our big goals for 2021. So thank you for those who have contributed those so far. And Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I am a bizarre amount of hyped for next week, where I will be talking about Shinji Ushiroda.
I will be talking about Michiru Oshima. Yeah, it should be a real fun time, that's for sure. Well, to play us out, Joe, you mentioned how OC Remix created an album called Serious Monkey Business, where a bunch of different people on OC Remix collaborated to do different remixes of songs from Donkey Kong Country 2. And so, of course, I was going to pick a song from that album. That was just a given. but you had the special request of this song from Nicole Adams, MJO, Injury, and Tepid, and it's called A New Place. It's a take on Hothead Bop. It adds some vocals to the melody. It's just a delight to listen to. I really enjoyed it, so thank you for the recommendation, and we hope you enjoy listening to it as well. That will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.